welcome back to Reading Light, the podcast shining a light on different bookish topics, discussions, ideas, concepts, the whole sort of jackpot, 9 yards, whatever you want to refer to it. We're all about books, chit-chatting about books, chit-chatting about genres, chit-chatting about habits, reading, what are we doing, what are we up to? You know the deal, okay? We've been a few episodes in, unless this is your first episode. And if this is your first episode, hello, welcome in. My name's Haley, and this is Reading Light. You've heard the whole spiel and intro. Welcome to today's episode. Hope everything's going well for everyone. I don't have much updates on my end. Well, I'm in the middle of moving, but by the time you hear this, I should have already been moved in and everything. So that's probably going to be completely outdated. But just know as of recording this, I'm in the process of moving, and there may have even been a time in the past when you're hearing this when I had to skip a week or something just to get everything, together, get moving and stuff. It's been, I've moved in my life. So I moved when I was little, but this house we've been in, or at least I've been in, okay, my parents are still going to be here, but I mean that I've been in here my whole life. I've never really had to move. I think the closest to moving I got was going to college. And that was still not at this capacity, this scale. So it's pretty stressful. It's been a lot. Thankfully though, like I said, my parents will still be here and stuff. It's not all of us moving. So I can still leave stuff and bring stuff gradually, but it's still been a process to get cause I want to move as much as I possibly can on this first go. I don't want to keep moving stuff back and forth, whatever, but so it's been a little bit, so that may have cut into my bit of a schedule here, but I hope everything's okay. That's the big, I guess, major life update for me. I also do want to say a little disclaimer. I am recording once again in a new spot, and I'm by a window, and I'm hoping you can't hear the airplanes when they come over. You might. I've heard from some people that they can hear them pretty clearly when, on Zoom and stuff, but in this case with, a microphone here, my phone microphone and stuff, maybe not. So if you can, I do apologize. I'm so sorry, and I also apologize in advance for any air conditioning sound you hear. It's very hot here. It's on. I have to keep it on. I can't sit with this humidity for that much, so I do apologize across the board. Hopefully you can just pay attention to me and listen to me about our topic today. Ooh, look at that smooth transition. Just me flying through this. I feel like I'm on zooming through this. I just had a cup of green tea, but so I have my water right now. So that's my beverage here. Nothing fun, but yeah. So anyways, we're into today's topic. We were talking about romance subgenres, which may seem a little random, a little weird. But I love exploring the romance subgenres. There are so many of them. There's more than is even I dive into, and even that I could find in my research, because you could look 10 different places and everyone will have 10 different answers as to what subgenres exist and whatnot. So I try to pull from multiple sources. There's listings of Wikipedia articles, which I do pull from. I don't use the wiki as a source per se. I definitely use it as a jumping off point, but I mainly look at the list, because if it's got a listing in Wikipedia, that's a pretty, substantial kind of thing, I would think. But then I also had to just pull from blogs. I also pulled from my own experience, such as browsing on Hoopla and whatnot. So it's kind of a mix of everything, but I hope it's kind of interesting to hear and dive into these different types of subgenres. Wow, that's a hard word to say. It might be a little difficult, but I hope you enjoy this, and I hope maybe you maybe find a new area you want to dive into, and you're always welcome to tell me about any other ones. Should I do a part 2? Is there even more out there that I need to dive even further into? But these ones I think I gathered maybe a little bit of obscure ones, or ones you wouldn't think have their own group and that maybe you've just seen in passing. And then I also have some pretty popular ones. So let's just dive right into it. But first I want to cover like subgenres. Like, what is that? So I'm describing this pretty basically, but a subgenre is a category of works that exist within an overall main subject. So our main genre here is romance, and a subgenre would be everything we're going to talk about today. So, for example, here's a better example, I guess, but in this case, we're talking about romance, and romance can look like anything, but within it, there may be like a group that focuses on a particular trope, feature, characters. This could look for, like, one we'll talk about today is like dark romance. You probably have heard, if you've explored any bit of romance, you've definitely probably heard about dark romance. That would be like a subgenre. I think a lot of people maybe know that, but I wanted to give that kind of intro, that preference into this to just make sure we're all starting on the same page. There are so many romance subgenres. I think as I said, that it gets a little convoluted when looking into it and searching it up and stuff. But it's fun to do. I love the romance category. It's what I have been mainly reading, I feel like, my entire, at least, teenage into young adult life. It is what I'm currently reading. It is always my go-to. Like, if I am like, I don't know what to read, I'm going to immediately go to the romance category. And there's probably a lot of different reasons that breaks down that way that we won't get into. But just know it is one of my favorites, and I think it is my most well-read genre. And I feel like I almost kind of have an authority when I think about it. But maybe not. Maybe that's just me toot my own horn. But I think I have the reading history to maybe back up my opinions and such. So that all being said, let's explore some common and maybe not so common romance subgenres, okay? Big note though, before I dive in. I know I keep saying let's dive in, and then I'm like, wait, there's a disclaimer. But isn't that how this always seems to go? So anyways, note, much of what I am discussing, and this is, I think I was talking about this previously, they come from a list of Wikipedia pages under category romance genres. The link to this will be in the description. Any other pertaining links, sources that I feel need to be communicated will also be in the description. I always try to cite as best as I can. So this link will be in the description. Information about these different romance subgenres mainly come from different discussions across the webs or observances I have made in my searches. Wikipedia is not the official source used for a lot of this information. It is a jumping off point, if anything. And any genre that's not listed within this sort of list of categories, typically, as I think I said, came from my own experience of browsing, just across the internet, especially in libraries and such, just my own, going to Libby, seeing what pops up, or Hoopla. I think Hoopla has a little bit better at breaking down these subgenres, but that's where this is coming from. So that's okay. All disclaimers are out of the way. We'll jump right in then to our very first subgenre. So I hope that got out. I'm sorry, I kind of sped run the meat, the potatoes of it all. Now we're getting into the meat. So we have meat and potatoes. That was the potatoes, but now we're in the meat, the thick of it, if you will. So first subgenre is an absolute classic. It's historical romances. Now, I think when I say historical romance, I think of a very particular, and maybe I'm thinking it's hard to say because I don't know the exact time periods, because when I think of historical romances, I think of there's words used like dukes, viscounts, lords, duchesses, spinsters, rakes. So I think of that kind of period. I really just want to say I think of Bridgerton, that kind of area. I have read outside of, I don't just read Bridgerton. I actually just started reading the Bridgerton books. So I've been experiencing this historical romance from various authors, and I've read a lot across the board in it. But I think of that as kind of the most straightforward, basic example. And I think it's, I do also want to say I think it's very cool that show has brought it definitely more into the kind of mainstream kind of discussion. I felt like when I first discovered historical romances, it was just like, a few groups of folks, and it felt like at a certain point it became for younger audiences, but it was definitely more not younger. I take that back, because these books do get, they get a bit spicy. So I don't want to say younger, but I think it came to a point where they finally were being written for like maybe young adults as opposed to older adults or adults in general. So love historical romances. However, it is not just that kind of classic time period. I guess I'm thinking of like the Regency era, Victorian era, that sort of thing. It's not just for that. It's historical romance can also be described as stories set in the past during any sort of specific time period. I think, as I kind of said, Regency romance is a very popular one, but you also then cannot rule out stuff like Viking romances. So that is, believe it or not, you maybe have not encountered that in your browsing of the library, but there's stuff like Viking romances or even medieval romances. I've never dived into either of those, but medieval romance, at least I don't think so. I definitely could have been reading medieval and had no clue, but I am very curious. So I'm very curious about that. This subgenre has such very serious, dedicated fans and readers, and very, loyalists in this. It's my go-to, like, paperbacks. If I'm at, like, the grocery store, I always want to buy up all the books at the grocery store, because that feels like such, like, my target demographic at this point, which is crazy to say at, like, 26 that I'm like, that's it, but I love what I love. I can't help it. So historical romances, definitely a personal favorite, and definitely I think this could be one of the more popular ones on the list for sure. But there's so many out there. Please, if you ever, just give them a go. They're so nice, so fun. My favorite author who does historical is Tessa Dare, but as I said, I've also been reading the Bridgerton one, so I'm loving Julia Quinn. I'm loving that stuff. I like her writing style, and they're quite funny. At least her and Tessa Dare, they've been quite funny with these types of books, and I really appreciate that. And it's sometimes you will get some of the authors who like to really stick to the writing style of that kind of era too. Sometimes it can be a little harder to read because it is, the writing style is a little different than, or it can be a little different than contemporary novels. So that might just be like fair warning, but honestly, just go for it. Just dive right in, please. So next up on these types of subgenres is paranormal romance. This is, as it sounds, it's a romance between typically a human and a paranormal creature. Sometimes it can be paranormal and paranormal. So like I've definitely, of course, seen like vampires fall in love with werewolves, that sort of thing. But mainly, I think the most popular might be human and paranormal creature. And then typically, doesn't it always end with the human turning into the paranormal creature of some sort? But yeah, so you can guess that is what this sort of subgenre is about. It's not just ghosts, I think, as the title maybe suggests. Paranormal, I think of, ghost apparitions, but it can range. It's werewolves, it's vampires, it's shapeshifters. I've never encountered one of those books, but I'm super intrigued by that. Shapeshifters? That sounds really interesting. That was also fun about researching this stuff, is I want to dive into more of these genres. Some of these I have read, and some of them I guess, I think all of these maybe perhaps I have read. Paranormal, obviously Twilight's the biggest one that I could, you could think of. So I definitely have read, but that's vampires and stuff. I would like to get more into like the more obscure ones, like shapeshifters, that whole thing. So I did find in my research for this one a article about human snake romance. So I don't know if that really counts in any capacity. I guess apparently that falls into this, but that sounds horrifying. Human snake romance? No, I didn't even click on it. I saw that in like the wiki listing, I believe it was, and I immediately just had to I backed out of it, I think. But yeah, so paranormal romance, obviously, I think I said before, Twilight is your biggest one. But don't only think of Twilight. There is so much in this category. I remember before my local half-price books, like, flipped everything on its head, they had shelves of these paperback paranormal romances. There is so many, and a lot of that actually, you know, is pretty much thanks to Twilight. Is like this kind of idea became more mainstream. It was definitely, I think, popular, obviously, but it became, you know, suddenly publishers wanted 1 million copies of it in their own sort of way. And that has not been a bad thing for anyone. Honestly, that has been such a blessing. So it's a good one. Go check out. Like I said, there are a lot of like paperbacks and stuff. And a lot of these are series, so you can really like dive right into it. And it's pretty good. Pretty good stuff. Next up on the list, though, kind of takes us into maybe a completely different sort of direction. Because as opposed to, we had paranormal, but now we're getting into like Christian fiction. And what I mean by that is specifically Amish romances. As I said, this categorized kind of as Christian fiction, specifically about the Amish. This, if you do not know, this is a very popular subgenre. Okay, I'll dive into that in a second, but just know it's very popular. And these types of books, to give you more idea on like what this means, although I think maybe the title gives it away, but it's books that focus on romance relationships set within Amish communities. Typically it is Amish and Amish people getting together and that sort of concept. These are very wholesome, very wholesome stories. There is some debate as to pose of like if they may or may not be accurate. Many, I'm sure you can guess, people who write these books are not Amish themselves. They are kind of just picking and choosing themes and ideas and stuff within it. So there is some issue over what kind of portrayal this is. However, as I said, it is pretty like clean. It is, it's a very conservative kind of ideas, chastity themes, no spiciness whatsoever. It's pretty wholesome. They're pretty wholesome, straightforward romances that are sweet, and they're just kind of nice. They're kind of a good palate cleanser. I have read one or two of these, and I like them. I'm honestly considering going back and revisiting them, because after I was doing this episode, the script for it, I was like, wow, I kind of want to redive into this for the hell of it. But it's good. And as I said, they're very popular. There's like conventions, like there are meetups and stuff, and you can go meet your favorite Amish author. You can buy books, you can swap, and they're everywhere. Please, if you're ever at like your grocery store, you can find them. You can find them without a doubt. You can go to any half-price books, any Barnes & Noble. I pretty much guarantee you will find some Amish romances. So they're good. They also have their own subgenres, or I guess I won't say it, because these are differences. So I won't call this, I take that back. I won't call them subgenres of the Amish, but there is like other like variations of this. Like there's Mennonite romances, Shakers, which I'm not 100% sure what that was, but I had seen that mentioned too. So there is other romances that apply to other, I guess, sectors of this area, this religion of Christianity. So if any of those are your fancy, they're probably out there. I feel like romance follows kind of like the fan fiction idea of like, if you have an idea of something, there's probably someone who has written it, at least one other person who has written something similar, and you know that there's an audience. There's going to be an audience, because if you thought of it, likely at least one other person has thought of it too. So, and are writing and reading it, and it just expands from there. So, Amish romance, a good, clean time. Would recommend. That is honestly probably the only like one I can say that's doesn't have spice on this. The rest of these always seem to have some correlation of spice. It kind of, obviously it'll always kind of depend on the author. I think that goes without saying. Just so their level and stuff. But this one, typically, it's very much of a conservative time. So now let's kind of shift into maybe kind of relates cowboy romances. Cowboy romances. Can you guess what it's about? It features cowboys. That's kind of like a westerny theme. I think of these as like a modern Western, because Western romances also kind of have their own thing, but I think of those, and from my understanding, that's more of like a historical, like the time period of like the West and Westerns and such. So this kind of has those ideas, but they're definitely more modern, more contemporary. They are still like, there's still like an overlap there, but these books tend to, feature a woman who's probably not from the area herself, and she ends up falling in love, meeting a cowboy of some kind, whether he works on a ranch, whether it's, well, typically, I guess, they work probably on a ranch. I don't know what other qualifications would make you a cowboy, but they meet, and it's this big kind of romance kind of thing. So there's big themes about being like a gentleman, that he's treating you right. It is more of a conservative theme, traditional values, but there can still be that spice that maybe would be missing from like a Christian fiction kind of area. They also don't tend to always get super religious. They can, absolutely, of course, but it is more that conservative traditional values. Man's going to treat you right. He's going to care for you. Big, strong cowboy kind of vibe. So it's pretty good. I've read these. I like them. I sometimes can't get enough of them. I find myself itching out. I just think it's, there's something comforting about it, quite honestly. Now the pendulum kind of swings as I get into this next genre, although it also in some ways stays the same. They have, I guess I should say, overlapping kind of concepts. This is billionaire romances. Once again, can you guess what that is about? But yeah, it's all about falling in love with a billionaire. Much like the cowboy genre, it tends to focus on a woman who is not rich, not very well off, being swept up off her feet by a billionaire. And she may be showered with gifts, experiences, foods. She's completely treated or fought to be treated well by this billionaire, and they are in love and stuff, and it's probably like a whirlwind, very romantic, but glamorous too. It's glamorous. These tend to definitely always kind of be spicy. I guess I shouldn't say the word always, but they do, I think, tend to be spicy, or at least there's some idea of they lean more towards that. I will say, if I try to relate to the cowboy genre also doesn't totally shy away from it. But the billionaire, it kind of doesn't have those super, like, maybe conservative values that maybe the cowboy does. However, it still overlaps there. And although it is definitely more, like, seen as contemporary and modern, there is, like, that traditional, like, man pays for everything and takes care of a woman that shines through. That may not be all of them all the time, but I have, in my experience in reading them, and granted, I haven't read hundreds of them. I've read maybe like a handful. I do still like see that, and so it is still there. But also, I quite enjoy these. I found them one day while browsing through Hoopla, and I do like them. I'll admit it. I'll be the first to admit it. I do enjoy these. I think they're fun. And they're kind of comforting sometimes, and I think it plays into like the fantasy, of course. We're all reading these romances for kind of that fantasy aspect, I would think, of oh, this is nice to hear. This is nice to read. This is nice to, kind of having that kind of moment. So they are comfy. They're good. They are nice. I don't know. They're hard to explain, I guess, or really brag about, but I'd say give them a go. They're usually pretty quick reads too. I would say billionaire romances, they can kind of suck me in and will be quick reads. Now, moving on. This one kind of, honestly, can also tie into the billionaire idea, but this is mafia / mob or mobster romances. This is a very popular genre. There is, without a doubt, that you have probably heard of this before, especially on social media. I remember these are pretty big on like Book Talk, I want to say. They do definitely mimic billionaire in quite a few different ways. I think they are a little bit grittier, which I'll get into, but they definitely mimic billionaire with like that glamour and riches being swept off your feet. He's treating like a princess, and it has those like kind of extreme ideas. Well, I won't call them extreme. Sorry. But they just kind of those like big ideas and those traditional values, and that all is definitely prevalent. However, as I previously said, they can be a little like darker than other genres may be considered. They can have aggressive or violent themes, such as like there's some that are like focused on like a kidnapping, like, oh, the girl's been kidnapped, and then the big mafia mobster guy comes in, saves the day, that kind of thing. So that, I would say that might be like a hallmark feature of the mafia romance, is being like protected, rescued, or fought for, or like, I always think of that like "who hurt you" line, that kind of concept, or even trope, I guess, maybe at that point. So focus is kind of much more on that. And these are not bad. These are pretty good. I've read a couple of them. I think some of the premises get a little funny. I think that always does tend to pop up too sometimes, or at least in what I've read and I've come across, is there always seems to be like the female character, her family owes a debt, so she must marry one of the like mafia guys. That's, of course, he's the most attractive, hot thing ever. And he's real cold and like quiet, but then like slowly like they end up like falling in love and everything. And that's the forced marriage trope, I guess it kind of is. And then they fall in love and everything. Sorry, I talk about these like I'm like, ooh, whatever, but I'm such a sucker for them. I will admit, it's so easy for me to get roped into a romance. You just kind of make me feel a little giddy, and it's like, oh, 5 stars. Like, like I'll devour this in a day. Like, just give me, this is so fun. So I try not to be hard on this, because my borrowing history at the library cannot be lied about or fought about. So moving on to a more, we're back out into maybe obscurity, or one that this actually kind of actually inspired this episode, because I came across it randomly, and I created kind of my own little like subgenre title for it, because there is some things that fall into it, or I felt it was, but these are like profession focused romances. And what I mean by that is like there will be romances about like people at jobs, specific jobs. Or it may not even be like both characters are in this profession, but at least one person is, and it kind of has those themes, and that's like the backdrop, I guess, like, because I look at like the Harlequin website, and they describe medical romance as escape to the world where life and love play out against a high-pressured medical backdrop. So that's kind of the idea, I guess. But yeah, so these are kind of like profession-based, profession-focused romances. These, I've never read any of these. I think you can also include like maybe military romance. I feel like that kind of falls into kind of this profession idea. It's romance with the military backdrop. Like I said, I have never read any of these, so I'm not sure kind of how the medical is like prevalent in this situation. I don't know why, because it just seems like the characters would just have like normal professions and it would just be like maybe a contemporary romance, but this is like such a specific kind of theme, and I'm curious about it. I'm actually curious. The more I thought about it, I am curious about it. I do wonder if it's kind of like Grey's Anatomy. That's kind of the note I made, kind of that thing, and like maybe the medical, that, because the Harlequin talked about like a high pressure background. So how does that like, I guess, play into the romance, and like, does that do something? I don't know. It's quite interesting. I should look more into it. And I honestly think the Harlequin, which is like a set of books, it's a publisher, I guess I should say, and they have very specific like book premises, and they're pretty straightforward books and stuff, and they're romances. It's like all romance. They have very interesting categories for their books, so that also might be fun to explore and get ideas and stuff. But here's the Amish romances written on their front page and stuff. They're very big also with like the supermarket paperback kind of ideas too. So medical romance. I gotta explore it more, but I hope I explained it well. It is kind of romance that is set in, I guess, specific professions. Like the one that popped right up when I was like Googling it was one about like one night with the vet. One night reunion with the vet. That sounds intriguing, and I kind of want to read it. I'm not knocking any of these authors or anything. God, I wish this was me. I wish I was just a mass publishing author for Harlequin, because I got ideas, you know? So this is one to explore. And if you've read any of these, also any genres I've talked about, but especially maybe even this medical romance one, let me know. What was it like? Did you enjoy it? Where's a good place to start? Please feel free to always let me know. I love getting recommendations. Obviously, there's a book community. I want to talk about books. So now we've come to our final subgenre. Wow, I forgot the word that I was using. This subgenre, at least for this episode, I maybe will make a follow-up and we'll explore even more. But of course, this is one I feel like I couldn't omit, and I talked about it way in the beginning of this episode, but dark romances. Dark romances, you probably have heard of them, whether it was in a positive or negative light. There is some controversy always with these dark romances, and it seems to always be a debate whether they're good or not. I personally, full disclosure, I've read these. I enjoy them from time to time. I seek them out from time to time. And I like them. I don't think there's anything wrong with it. I don't think there's anything wrong with writing it. You're writing it. It's just an idea, and there's all sort of, I think, psychological explanations for maybe what you read and why you read this and what goes on in these books and why, what kind of exploring themes and stuff of it. But it is a very popular genre, like subgenre, despite the controversy that may come with it. But I don't think it's horrendous. Are some of them maybe sometimes a little cringy, a little too much, a little like, why did he say that kind of moment? Absolutely. But typically, if you don't know, dark romance focuses on dubious and darker characters and their odd ways of pursuing love interests. So that's kind of a weird explanation, but it can feature like violence in certain ways. It has like morally gray characters. There's usually some sort of trauma, obsession. Stalking and kidnapping seem to be pretty big themes, and I'm talking like the female is stalked by the male character, or I guess these could also be a LGBTQ too. I've never encountered that, and I don't think maybe that's written, but when I say female and male characters, I guess that is predominantly what the romance genre is about, but there is, of course, people across the board writing so much, so great, fantastic works of art. So, but in this case, I'm just speaking, I guess, for this genre. It typically is like a female character and she's being stalked or even kidnapped by the male character, and it ends with kind of romance, falling in love. I think maybe it's the Stockholm sometimes. I've never read like a kidnapping one, but I've read like the stalking, the more morally gray characters. It because it always doesn't always escalate to like stalking per se. It is just, maybe has themes of like obsession, as I said, trauma, all that. It's problematic to extremes sometimes. It can be a very divisive genre, but like I said, I've read them. I've enjoyed some of these sometimes. I don't know. It's hard to explain, I guess, with them. Maybe if you've read any of these and you want to elaborate more, you think there needs to be like a better idea for this, please let me know. I did have a hard time with like researching it and figuring out how to exactly put into words what dark romance is, because it is something that like it's hard to tell people about, but when you encounter it, and it's really, it's just hard to sometimes describe. I think the most popular one right now is called Lights Out. I'm gonna Google that real fast. Lights Out. Yeah. I think this is currently the most popular one. It's Lights Out by Nevessa Allen. But it's described as a dark romance with a morally gray character. Some themes and schemes may be disturbing to listeners. Please check out the content warning at the beginning of this book. Okay, so I guess I should also say that the male lead is not the like aggressor in the situation. He may just make choices that are, I guess, as this, morally wrong. They could just be a pretty aggressive character to anyone but the woman. But there is still, on the flip side, there is some concerning, actions that can be taken by these characters to the love interest too. That's kind of, it gets all really muddy with it. So yeah, I guess Lights Out's the most popular one. I've never read it. I don't know if I want to read it. It got really big on Book Talk, and I don't know if you want to do that, but so the dark romance, it's a pretty big genre. It has its own little thing on Goodreads that you can like go down. I see some overlap with like the mafia genre too and all that. So there is. I just picked up one that just had some kidnapping themes. So it's there. I'm not too gruff, but yeah, so very interesting. I didn't know that about that Lights Out book. The cover is very much off-putting, I guess, too, I must say, but that's okay. Yeah, it's okay. Anyways, that kind of gives my little overview of some subgenres for romances. I hope this was kind of interesting to listen to. I'm sorry I kind of fumbled that dark romance description. I hope maybe I get across what it is. And please, of course, if you have a better way of describing it, or a better understanding, or you have you've read other books that maybe disproves kind of what I had read, because I'm basing my description off what I have read and what I have also found as descriptors across the internet who have tried to describe dark romances. So, but please let me know. Of course, I'm always open to hearing from you guys what just your ideas, thoughts, opinions on this, and I hope it was still a good listen though. So I hope it was still informative, still fun. I hope you maybe found like a new genre you might be interested in diving into, or but also, I think I said this before, but If you've read any of these or anything that goes within this, please let me know where to, give recommendations, where to start, what's good, what's bad. I'm always open to hearing about that too. I love hearing about people's, worst reads. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed this. I'd love to hear from you if you got the time or whatever, but no pressure, not whatever. I hope this was at least some good background music. I hope you're having a lovely day, week, month, wherever you are, and keep reading on.